Today is Heidi Sonboul's Christmas DIY Challenge, and I'm back with more quick and easy Dollar Tree DIYs. I've got 3 different projects that will help you transition into holiday decor, and as always, I'm keeping it budget friendly with most of my supplies available at Dollar Tree. So snuggle up with a blanket and your favorite warm drink, and let's get started. For my first project today, I'm recreating one of my most favorite DIYs from last year when I had just started out my channel. I'm creating birch looking vases out of round gift containers from Dollar Tree. I like the look of 3 together, so I got 3 of varying sizes. And they have all different styles and different designs. The only thing to watch out for is glitter. If you get any with glitter, just sand it off or wrap it with plain cardstock before proceeding with the project. I began by giving my containers a quick coat of chalk paint. Today I'm using the plaster color by Waverly. And while I'm painting, I'll mention that today's video is part of the Heidi Sonboul Christmas DIY Challenge. I'm sure everyone's already familiar with Heidi, but I'll link her channel in the description box below, as well as the playlist for the challenge. So be sure to check out her channel and then hop to the playlist to see what everyone comes up with. Now I'm using a dry brush and adding the color Warm Buff by Apple Barrel Paints, followed by the color Elephant by Waverly. I use the same technique to apply both colors sparingly around the containers. I dip a chippy brush ever so slightly into the paint, dab most of it off on a paper, and then brush it gently onto a container. I move back and forth in the same direction, which creates rough grain lines. And the 2 colors layered together creates great dimension, so the containers are really starting to look like birch wood. Next, I'm taking a pencil and drawing squiggle lines around the containers to create what looks like breaks in the bark. The lines are of varying lengths, and I want this to look super random, so I'm not following any sort of pattern. And finally, I'm using my dry brush again to add more of the darker elephant color over the pencil marks. This adds the characteristic dark areas you see in natural birch wood. Fill with your favorite florals. I like to add different textures and colors and wanted to use really natural colors today with different greens, browns, silvers, and golds. I also thought it was fun to add in some succulents for the perfect transitional piece from fall to winter. For my next project, I'm using more of the chopping mats I used for my tobacco baskets in a previous video and running with the same idea to create a cone tree. To create the form, I'm using the middle ring from the small wreath forms from Dollar Tree, which come in a pack of 2, and 3 packs of these plastic knitting needles that come in a pack of 2. If you can't find the knitting needles, you could also use wood skewers. They're just a little bit shorter, and I also thought the plastic knitting needles were a little stronger to support my tree, so that's what I used. I started out by using wire cutters to separate the wreath rings, and again I'm using the middle ring today. The wire cutters also worked well for trimming off the ends of the knitting needles. Next, I used my glue gun to attach the needles to the ring. I used whatever I had nearby in my workstation to hold the skewers upright while I glued more. Once I had 3, I used more hot glue to glue them together in a point at the top. Then I filled in with the other 3 needles. And then I'm giving my tree form a quick coat of the plaster color by Waverly. So my channel had a birthday. I just passed my year mark, and I want to thank all my subscribers for your support. This year has been really hard for me personally with my mother's death, but this channel has been a great outlet for me, and I have learned so much and met a lot of other wonderful creators in the process. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So next I grabbed more of the plastic chopping mats from Dollar Tree and cut them into 1/2-inch wide strips. Since the mats are clear, my grid mat from Iron Orchid Designs made it really easy to draw the lines for the strips. I cut the strips lengthwise from the mat so that they are a little longer. So once I had all my strips cut, you see me here gluing the strips vertically to each of the knitting needles and then trimming them off at the top. Now, you know I like to share what I would do differently if I had a do-over, and I think for this one I would have made the strips a tad bit wider, maybe 3/4 of an inch instead of 1/2 inch. Next, it was time for the horizontal strips. For the strip at the very bottom, I didn't weave it. I just glued it to the front of one of the posts at the bottom and worked my way around gluing to each vertical post as I went. The strip wasn't quite long enough to make it all the way around, so I just overlapped a second strip and continued around the circle till it met the other end. For the remaining strips, I wanted to weave them like my tobacco baskets I've done in the past, so I left about an inch of space between the strips and glued the end behind one of the vertical strips. Because of the way the strips were glued to the front of the sticks, it created a nice stable area to glue the strips to. Then I just wove the strip over the next vertical piece, trimmed it off, and glued it to the back of the next one. I continued in this way all the way up the cone. So I've had a couple questions recently about the tattoo on my wrist. Someone actually asked me if it was angel wings, and looking at it from the side here in my videos, I can definitely see how it might look like that, but nope, it's not angel wings. It's actually a tattoo that I designed myself to commemorate my 2 boys and their journey through a skull condition called craniosynostosis. I've mentioned it a couple times before, but it's been a while, so some of my new friends may not have heard me share this before. My 2 boys, Tommy and Tyler, were both born with a condition called craniosynostosis. The short way of explaining it is that their soft spots fuse too soon. It requires surgical correction, and between the 2 of them, they've had 6 neurosurgeries to reconstruct their skulls. They both have ear-to-ear scars over their heads, and my tattoo is their 2 profiles showing their scars. I got that tattoo when I was in Vegas with some friends for my 40th birthday. It was right after what was hopefully their final surgeries back in 2018. They're now 10 and 8.5 and doing great. Their hair covers their scars and they are happy and healthy and thriving. And looking at them, no one would ever know what they've been through, but to call them warriors is a real understatement. So back to the project. It was too tricky to continue weaving at the top, so I decided to wrap jute twine around the point of the cone where the strips overlapped. I glued the twine every so often and wrapped up around the top and then back down, filling in any spaces from the first go round that I missed. Next, I took my tree outside and did a quick coat of spray primer. I've had a few projects where the paint peeled off of the plastic after a few months, so I'm avoiding that with spray paint, which will stick well to the plastic. If you aren't concerned with longevity though, you can skip this step. Back inside, I'm covering the piece with Waverly chalk paint in the color white. The spray paint was just a thin coat, so it was pretty transparent in some places, so this made sure that the tree was solid white. Then I distressed the piece with my black wax. I used a dry chippy brush first to lightly brush the strips all over. Then I went back over with a flat brush to add darker distressed areas here and there around the tree along some of the edges of the strips. Now the options are pretty open with how you can embellish this, but I wanted to fill in some of the space between the strips, so I used vertical strips of black and white buffalo check ribbon. I did have some trouble getting the ribbon up into the narrow point of the tree, and I learned through trial and error to attach the ribbon to the back of the highest strip. And then I just crumpled up a napkin and stuck it up into the point to hold the ribbon in place that was above where it was glued so it didn't fall down. It's amazing as a crafter what you can hide behind or underneath projects. And a final little addition, I added some of the red berry garland from Dollar Tree. It's not glued down, so if I ever want to change it up a little, I can. And here it is on my counter. I just love how this turned out, and I think it's a long way from those chopping mats that we started with. I think it would look great in wood tones too. Let me know in the comments what you think and how you would change it up to fit your own style. For my final project today, I'm creating a little succulent planner that looks like a little drum. I started with one of these little red dishes from Dollar Tree. I measured the perimeter of the rim and divided it into 6 equal parts and made marks with a marker. The marks were about 2 1/4 inches apart. Then I also made marks at the half point in between the original marks. I glued jute twine to the first mark, then used the midpoint as a gauge and glued the twine to the bottom rim where it lined up with the middle. Next, I glued the twine to the second mark at the top, creating a V design. I moved around the dish, repeating these V's as I went. Next, I measured and cut a 1.5 centimeter wide strip from a piece of batting that I had left over from a previous project, but you can use any fabric you have on hand. felt would work, or I think a plaid flannel pattern might look nice too. I glued the piece around the rim over the twine and then folded it around the rim and glued it down to the inside. I followed the same process for the bottom rim. And here it is on my counter with a few succulents from Dollar Tree. I absolutely love how this turned out, and I think it would look amazing on a bathroom counter or a windowsill. I also want to make a bigger version, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for joining me today. If you found me from Heidi's playlist, I'd love for you to stick around and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you will be notified each time I post a new video. I have lots more up my sleeve for this holiday season that you won't want to miss, so that's the best way to ensure that you won't. See you next time. Bye.